What's going on, everybody? It's your host, the Sports Moose, back at it with Thunderdome Puckcast on episode 28, of course. Get back at it. Lots of Lightning games to talk about that we missed during our vacation down to the City of Champions, Tampa, Florida. But we're back here in the saddle, ready to get back to our regularly scheduled Lightning coverage. We'll talk Central Division as well. Few issues plaguing the Lightning. They looked a little bit in trouble on the front half of these last few games, but firmly back in control of the Central. We'll talk about a few things that we need to be on the lookout. And then, of course, we'll start our rotation through the other divisions of the NHL, starting with the fun Canada, NFC North. I'm here thinking Super Bowl. The NHL North Division, sponsored by Scotiabank, of course, with all the divisions having sponsors this year. All that and more, episode 28 coming at you after this. Hope you've been having a great week. It's been a little bit since we put out a new episode, of course. But happy to be back. Needed a few days away. Was happy to get back down to Florida. See some friends and family. Celebrate my dad's 60th birthday. It was great. A little bit of time away from the podcast, but we are back. Nice to be in Tampa. Didn't get to really look at the sights. Of course, I don't even think the Lightning were in town. Not that they were having fans or anything. But Tampa's in full Super Bowl mode. So a little bit of the focus shifting away from the Bolts for now, which is a shame. Playing some good hockey as of late. Of course, Central Division starting to look like may not be a big challenge. But we'll talk about that in a moment when we look at the standings. But I just don't think the Lightning have played anyone tough in there yet. Surprising starts by the Panthers and the Stars, both of which have not faced the Lightning yet. So I think a little bit more to come on who's really the powerhouses in the Central, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, welcome to the Thunderdome Puckcast. This one's episode 28. We always release weekly episodes. Been trying to shoot for Mondays. It's been a little tough with NFL still going on, but as the Super Bowl finishes up this week, we'll make sure to get regularly scheduled podcast episodes that you can listen on your favorite podcasting platform. Of course, we release live video of the podcast recording if you like watching along. It's actually kind of an audio-visual show as well. We always have our topic cam showing what we're talking about. So if you like YouTube, we're on there as well. You can look for us at The Sports Moose Show. You'll find our archive of old shows, and of course, Thunderdome Puckcast coming right at you there. Great set of games to talk about. And last time we talked, we were analyzing kind of a tough 5-2 loss against Columbus. Not thinking too much of it. I mean, we knew Columbus was going to be a tough team. The benching and the gradual trading away of Pierre-Luc Dubois. I don't know if you were able to see any of the clips in game 1 of the Columbus series. His absolute dogging of an effort early on in the first period, leading to Tortorella just immediately benching him and basically immediately being traded away within a day or two. An absolute blockbuster move. Basically trading some disgruntled forwards. Patrick Laine formerly of the Winnipeg Jets coming over to Columbus. And of course, Pierre-Luc Dubois moving over to Winnipeg, which is kind of an interesting destination for someone who wants to play in the limelight. And I think a lot of the background noise, say what you will about being a planter, John Tortorella, but I think Pierre-Luc Dubois wanted a little bit bigger of a spotlight than Columbus, the city, and Columbus, the market could to give. It's just the debate's always going to be: is Pierre-Luc Dubois a true number one center? Can he carry a team? He looked great over the playoffs, for what it's worth. At least in the playoffs, in the bubble playoffs a few months ago, looked great. Had a pretty consistent year leading up to that for Columbus this year, but never really happy. I mean, you kind of saw that with Jonathan Drouin, which is a very similar situation here in Tampa. Starting to be a distraction, starting to voice his general dislike for the Tampa market, and maybe felt more at home in Canada and in Montreal, Quebec. And Stevie Y made a move. That's how we got Sergei on our team, of course. Kind of looking back retrospectively, hard to say the Lightning haven't won that trade. Hard to say that. We got a Stanley Cup. They've got who right now is playing the third defensive pairing. And we'll look at some data in a moment that shows that, I guess, with Sergachev on the third, a member of the third defensive pairing, it's like the number one ranked third defensive pairing in the league. That's what we have. We have somewhat defensive depth, which we'll talk about later on in the episode. That we can play Sergachev on the third defensive pairing. It's pretty amazing. All right, let's get right to it. First items for conversation, of course. We got 4 games to talk about here. 4 games to talk about. I'm going to switch it over to Topic Cam if you're watching along with us on YouTube. But the last few games here, starting off with Carolina, kind of an opportunity for a bounce back, traveling for a quick trip to Carolina. It was supposed to be a 2-game series, Carolina having some COVID issues. Thankfully, we were able to play the back half of that 2-game set, because if both games had been canceled, you're looking at a situation with the Lightning would have played 6 games in 3 weeks, which is absolutely crazy. Fortunately, only one of those games having to be postponed, but something we'll talk about as we go on in the season, especially now with Vasi getting the first 8 starts of the season, with Curtis McElhinney having been out on the COVID list and I believe confirmed positive COVID at some point. Lightning backup goalie, he's going to have to get in some action there. I mean, I don't know if you want a situation where Vasi's, playing 40 plus games of a 56 game season, especially with all these cancellations. You remember the Dallas cancellations getting kind of sprinkled in the middle of the season. You're looking at the Lightning playing about 52 games in 104 days. So Lightning hockey is going to be coming at you fast and quick, which isn't bad. But when you're looking at potentially making another deep playoff run in a tough division, I think a physical division once you get to the playoffs, you have to say, got to be a little concerned about the odds of the Bolts getting out of here, hopefully representing the Central in the Final Four or whatever they're going to call it, with the reseeding happening. Yeah, you just get a little concerned. And kind of saw some of the rust still. You had about 5-6 days between games again, coming off a 5-2 loss. You can't bounce back, right? You got to linger on it a little bit. Not Vasi's best game. It's very rare that he has 2 bad games in a row, and you saw it once again. You want to talk about a bounce back effort from a goaltending standpoint. This was an absolute clinic. 34 saves on 35 shots. The only bad thing is he was outplayed by Petr Mzarek, who's having a heck of a season. I actually was pretty surprised with some of the numbers here for goalies. Petr Mzarek having an absolute gem so far to start in the top 10, I believe, in goals against and save percentage. He's been great. He's been great for Carolina. Carolina's been getting results despite being shorthanded because of COVID and a few key injuries. I think Jacob Slavin wasn't in for this game against the Lightning. Regardless, doesn't matter. This was a great game. I mean, I got to see a little bit on the back half. Actually, able to meet up with some friends, and we actually got to see the third period in overtime. One of our favorite places to go over a few beers. So it was tough to see the Lightning lose in overtime, but again, are people already pointing at some of the officiating going on being questionable? You know, in my opinion, I think it was a pretty well called game. Sure, a couple calls being let go. Looked like a little bit of playoff hockey. But overall, I think Carolina, as predicted, I mean, I was kind of on the fence before. Everyone was speaking very highly of Carolina going in as putting them second place behind the Bolts. I was a little surprised by that, especially given some of the playoffs. Of course, it's another year of experience for their young core. And they had to get some great play from Mrazek. Dougie Hamilton, of course. Slavin, once he's back in the lineup. I mean, you can't forget about Pesci, up and coming defenseman as well. So, Carolina has the potential to give us problems, and this was a fairly even game. Face-offs are like 50-50, unbelievable. Pretty good checking all around. I think Lightning ended up with 32 shots on goal. So, I mean, this was a back and forth. This was a goaltending show. And in the penalty minutes, I think Bolts went 0 for 4 on the power play. Carolina 0 for 3. With the only goal coming 1 minute into overtime. Just kind of a tough luck on, Bolts never had the puck. I mean, winning that, when you're playing for points, especially when it's all intra-division games, right? Inter-division games or whatnot. These are essentially 4-point games. Winning the face-off on 3-on-3 overtime is so important. And one thing, I listen to a few other Lightning podcasts out there, some great podcasts. Lightning Insider with Eric Erlinson. Awesome. I mean, Eric's covered the Lightning ever since I could read the newspaper. So, always look forward to his coverage when he used to be with the Tribune back in Tampa. Great podcast there. And even some of this play covered by Puck Soup's one of my favorites as well. And can't forget the boys of Spittin' Chicklets, always giving some love for Tampa. But really, Eric Erlinson was the one who pointed this out. And I didn't realize this, of course, being out at the bar, watching the Bolts, not paying too much attention to the starting three. But, Tyler Johnson got the start in overtime. He's been an under 50% face-off man this year. So, kind of a critical, maybe if he gets it, boost the old morale up. I know he's been playing like he hasn't had confidence basically the whole year already. Questions of him living on the fourth line, especially after some of the play that we've seen from Matthew Joseph these next few games we'll talk about. But a little puzzled there. The decision to put Tyler Johnson out there, loses the face-off. Bolts never see the puck. Puck's in the back of the net. Game over. We're able to take a point here from this one, but both points heading to the Hurricanes. 2 points. So hopefully that's not super critical as we go on the season. But again, kind of a interesting decision by Cooper. A decision I guess I understand. Trying to get Tyler Johnson motivated. Very long leash. Tyler Johnson, someone who's been with Cooper for a long, long time, even back in Norfolk before the team moved over, or the Lightning minor league team moved over to Syracuse. I mean, that was Norfolk Admirals group of players that were coached by Cooper and have moved up through the system. So a little bit of allegiance there. I understand it. And again, I think the Lightning are going to have a big enough pushing this year. We're not have to worry about that. But again, close checking game. Carolina actually looks impressive. I'm pretty excited for the next time we play him. End of the month, end of February, we have three games in 4 nights. So this is going to be really the money shots here. Could be the potential to define the season early on. We can take 2 out of 3 in the upcoming Hurricane games at the end of February. I liked what I see. Some good thumping, good action, good goaltending. Good goaltending, even though I still give the edge to Vasilevsky, maybe Mrazek, overperforming just a little bit. Moving on to the Nashville series. This was a series I was actually a little concerned about, because I guess prior to playing the Lightning, Nashville was getting pretty good goaltending. Pekka Rinne getting the start in game 1, Vasilevsky also getting the start with Curtis, I think, still out, or perhaps not healthy enough to play or fit enough to play. This was a crazy physical game. 2 sets of fights, the misconduct penalties. I think Maroon gets a 10-minute misconduct at the end of the game, has a fight. Is he close to the Gordillo hat trick? He hasn't scored a goal yet. Maroon's actually been struggling as this whole season in terms of generating offense. Fourth line, well, maybe in a future episode we'll look a little bit more closely as they're out there, typically 5-on-5, right? To see in terms of puck possession what they're generating and chances, but it hasn't been as noticeable as last year. Because last year, this is really where you're missing, I think, Seti Paquette. Our fourth line last year grinded. They were puck possession, just cycling the puck, holding it down low. It really excelled at dump and chase. That was a dump and chase clinic with Paquette and Patrick Maroon. And Carter Verhaeghe kind of getting in that action in the playoffs. Of course, moving on to Florida, having a great season. Great start in Florida. We haven't seen the Panthers yet, so we'll see. We'll see if we get some revenge games. Carter Verhaeghe getting his money in Florida. We just weren't going to be able to afford him here. First game, I think Lightning shot off to a 3-0 lead in game 1. Things got pretty chippy. Actually, forgot. Nashville opened up the scoring. My bad. Ryan Ellis on a power play goal. Then the Lightning scored 4 in a row in the second. Huge second period by the Bolts. And then the third period, we kind of saw Nashville clawing themselves back in it. Another power play goal. Matthew Oliver and Arvidsson got on the board, getting close 4-3 in this first one. Hits 21-17. I felt like there were more. Got to see this some of the highlights on this one again. Out with family, enjoying time off. Shots 33-26 favor the Bolts. And Bolts, man, 34-21 the face-off circle. That's what you like seeing. Bolts have actually, that's something that's improved over the offseason. I don't know if it's been practiced, because I think Stamkos is 60% on the year, maybe a little bit higher than that. So really missed that, I think, during the playoffs. I was always dry. It drove me up the wall. Anytime we were losing the face-off game, that's games where we struggled with puck possession. Despite coming up big at the end, so important to get those precious seconds of possession right off the face-off. And wild game, 34-30 on the penalty minutes. A few 10-minute misconducts, 2 sets of fights. Yanni Gourde dropping the gloves, which I couldn't believe. With Dante Fabro, absolutely crazy. This game that Calfoot got his first goal. I think Calfoot either got his first goal in the first. Get back to the box score. I think it was this one. Yeah, Johnson. Nice to see him get on the scoreboard. Please, Johnson, keep going. Yeah, Johnson, Cal Foot, actually a second, got his first. Did he get his first goal? Oh man, I don't know what's going on. Cal Foot on the board, Victor Hedman and Stamkos. Power play goal by Johnson and Stamkos. So power play looking good for the Bolts, though underperforming. Of course, you can see we'll keep some key stats going right below us. I think power play 16th in the league here, 20.7%, despite 2 power play goals in this first game against the Predators. Rene, respective night, 29 saves, 87.9 on the save percentage in second star. And first star, Victor Hedman and Stamkos. Great games from them. Again, Victor, he just always an offensive threat, and that's why I think you got to put money down right now on Victor Hedman winning the Norris Trophy. He's such a force, an underrated is not the right word. Just he gets so much notice for his offense, but his defensive position and prowess is just unmatched. He's been absolutely amazing, and definitely a candidate for a back-to-back Golden Wagon winner. So we'll see who wins the Golden Wagon in a moment. Second game of the Predators Lightning, a lot less physical. There's still some hitting going on. No fights, which is kind of interesting because we've talked about how this series format, it's almost like playoff action all the time, right? It kind of makes it hard to forget that game because you're facing the same team. But kind of amazing that we were able to keep emotions in check. I guess it doesn't help when you open up the scoring, 3 straight goals, another goal in the second period. Of course, put off the gas a little bit, and 2 quick ones, 2 goals within, I think, 2.5 minutes for the Predators in the third. But Palat again on the board. Yanni Gourde getting a second. Brayden Point with his third. And Yanni scores again at the end of the third period. Stamkos on the power play again. So 4 goals for Stamkos at this point. Don't think he scored in the Detroit game that we'll talk about shortly, but he had an assist or 2. So he's leading the team with 10 assists. Yeah, this reminded me a lot of the Chicago Blackhawks game earlier. It was a laugher, to say the least. Not too much pressure from Predators at all. They ended up out shooting us with, I think, a little bit of that pressure coming in the third period. It was really smooth sailing. I mean, some tough plays by Soros. I think he could have been a little bit better. Overall, Lightning dominating victory over the Predators to close out and sweep the series until we see the Preds again this week. So kind of a home and home against the Predators. So we're heading to Nashville now. Leave Monday after Super Bowl. Their Predators are coming up once again. Kind of evenly spaced out here against the Predators. We'll see them. We'll play the Predators here next upcoming week. Another set in Tampa in March, and then a set in April. I mean, kind of spaced out here against the Predators. So we'll see them again more sooner rather than later. And then closing us out, first game of the Detroit series. Very similar. And almost a yawner. You get excited anytime you score some goals. Not going to complain. These are the games you got to relish. Baskey getting the start again. I would not be surprised if Curtis finally makes his debut tomorrow in the back half of this 2-game series against the Wings. But once again, Lightning scored 4 to open up. Yeah, they're loving it. Hedman, Cirelli, McDonough in the first period. all within. Oh man, that's what I didn't get to see because I was driving back home. Yeah, 3 goals in 5 minutes. I think they chased either Grice or other goal. Check the box score. Yeah, autoplay videos are the worst. Yeah, they chased Grice real quick with Card coming in relief. So Thomas Grice out within 3 minutes. Braden Point with his 4th, and Killorn on the board with his 2nd. Detroit getting a goal, lone goal from Anthony Mantha, his 4th of the year in the 2nd period. Here, we really saw the 3rd line. I thought it was really where we saw some love here. Coleman. Looks like he played a little bit with Killorn. I think we went 11-7 here, so some mixing of the lines. But really, especially the 2nd Nashville game and this game against the Red Wings, this is really kind of segueing into our conversation we're going to have in a moment of what do we do with Matthew Joseph, because he's playing awesome. He's playing so great. You know, Tyler Johnson still a 15-minute effort, but Matthew Joseph's ice time is right up there, 16 minutes. Kind of a Patty Maroon. Another penalty, couple hits, but I think he might still be goose egg in points. I'll have to double check that. But again, Matthew Joseph's minutes are trending up. Let me check what they were in Nashville. Nashville game. Yeah, 11:34. Johnson at 14 for the 2nd game. But it's just, you're hearing this situation where Joseph playing with so much more upside. Johnson's been a pretty solid lock at 14 to 15 minutes. First game of Nashville, Joseph only 7 minutes, so a little bit of an increased role. I think Cooper's kind of struggled what to do in the absence of Stevens. I mean, we've gone 11-7, we've gone 12-6. You know, I guess now the big question is, what do we do? And we'll progress into our big topic of last few games, talking about Tyler Johnson and really his fall. I mean, it's been so, I don't know if sad to say the word to say. I mean, it's professional hockey. Stuff happens to players all the time. But this was a guy in 2015 that, if he doesn't get hurt and the Bolts pull off that series, that I mean he's a potential Conn Smythe winner. I mean that's what kills me, and I love Johnson. Being a season ticket holder in the early to mid 2010s before I moved on here to Texas where I'm at now. Really seeing that young team come together. It's just crazy to me that we've seen such a lack of progression, or just such a regression, I should say, over the last year and a half, 2 years. And, I think we all know it's going to be the last year here in Tampa. Whether a move is made, trade deadline, before, after. So, I feel like Johnson is primed to be on the Seattle Kraken next year in some way, shape, or fashion. Of course, it's Washington homegrown, so not necessarily the worst thing, but if you see the emergence of Matthew Joseph now getting 2nd line minutes, where's that put Johnson? That 4th line? Put him with Maroon? Put him down there? I just, Volkov, once Mitchell Stevens is back, I mean, what happens? What happens once Kucherov is back? Are we looking at a situation where out of respect, we're going to have Johnson in the lineup. It's just tricky. And this is really why we'll go back and talk about the Central in a moment, but really depth lines and Johnson are the big issues plaguing the Lightning. It looked like we were going to be in trouble, kind of back-to-back losses. I couldn't tell you the last time we had like back-to-back losses, but I wanted to look here at the lines as they stand. Of course, number one line pretty well defined. I got Stamkos out in the wing, Braden Point at center with Palat, Killorn, Cirelli, Johnson, and they've thrown Matthew Joseph up there. Don't break up the third line with great chemistry, looked great over in the playoffs, and have looked pretty good here. I think we need a little bit more production, I would say, from Gourde, Goodrow, and Coleman. And really, Patty Maroon struggling. I think he's having a tough season, tough go at it. I don't know if, I think we'll have to look at the 5-on-5 numbers, like we said. Not sure if I think he misses Paquette. I mean, those two were a combo, man. That was great to see. Then they have Shen's, they have like Shen in there because the Lightning more often than not are going to play 11-7. But I expect that as Mitchell Stephens gets back, he'll fulfill. We'll probably play 12-6 a little bit more. But the big question is, if Joseph makes that jump to the second line, Johnson comes back to the fourth line, minutes go down to 9, 8, 7 minutes a game. It's tough. That's a tough sell, especially for someone that you're trying to trade. Wanted to look at our defensive depth because we really didn't know how long Eric Chernak was out, and I had a minor panic attack. I think maybe, of course, I'm sure they knew the extent of the injury, but on the surface, kind of makes you think now, what happens if one of your, you lose one of your defensemen? Again, as pointed out by Lightning Insider, Lightning really like pairing their right and left-handed defensemen together. So again, this is a situation where you'll see Sergei, who's probably a solid second pairing defenseman, having to play on the third pair because he's a lefty, and he's the third lefty up. I mean, when you have Victor Hedman and you have Ryan McDonough, you're going to be the third lefty on the depth chart. We've talked already. I think I always have I feel like we have a Jan Ruda segment of our podcast now every episode. But he is what he is, and we always say that he is what he is. I don't think he's been terrible, but he really is what he is. He's gonna make mistakes. Sometimes he has a game where he overperforms, and it's what you get for under $1 million cap hit. I mean, it's something that we have to live with until we can, either the cap goes up or we have to make some tough choices. And it is what it is. See how he's doing this year so far. Played in all 8 games, just 1 assist and 1 point, of course. 8 penalty minutes. So again, averaging about 15 minutes on the ice. It's funny though, Corsi 4 percentage at even strength, over 50%. So usually when he's on, I guess that's what happens when you're paired with Victor Hedman. You get to possess the puck more as a unit. But again, my concern is what happens if one of these guys go down. Are we comfortable with Hal Foote being slated right there next to Sergachev, who I guess is a senior now? What happens if one of these guys gets hurt? Of course, we have Andreas Borgman on the taxi squad. Hasn't played a game yet. Probably needs to get in, get some action going, especially with the uncertainty of the minor league system this year. Some limited action available. So don't want your guys on the taxi squad wasting away. Again, what happens if an injury happens. You know, we have veteran Luke Shen, right-handed shooting. We lose one of our lefties once again. Like, what's gonna happen there? Happy to see Chernak back. Like we always say, your defensive defensemen are like the offensive linemen. If you don't hear their names, they're doing a good job. So we haven't heard too much from Jan Root lately, and never hear too much about Eric Chernak. Been just a solid value guy. So really, we'll see how this progresses as we move on. Excited to see Joseph bounce back. He was really my player to watch last year, and after a disappointing start, spending most of the year in Syracuse. Let's hop back over and look at the Central quickly, and then we'll close up this episode of Thunderdome Puckcast. Of course, not a surprise. Bolts in the lead, 13 points. Right behind them, though, Columbus, who have played 4 more games. 4 more games in the Bolts, right there with 13 points. I am excited for this Carolina Hurricanes showdown, and I'm excited that we get a nice 3-game set coming up. I think that's really going to find out a little bit about the boys coming up here in the end of February. I'm excited to play, though, and I think they finally had a regulation loss, or they might have actually just had another OTL. The Florida Panthers, kind of a surprise. And might have to look at them a little more closely to see where is their success coming from. I mean, it's Bobrovsky, not having a great year once again. I mean, he's under 90% save percentage. His goals against average is flirting with 3. At the same time, they're getting some scoring. I mean, we talked about Verhaeghe, Barkov having a solid year. Oh, I didn't know Duclair was on there. Happy to see Duclair on there. Yeah. Gudas on there as well. Wenberg. So they've got kind of a strange team. Aaron Ekblad's there as well. Anton Strawman. Well, they've been winning games. Let's look at their last 3. Look at the Panthers' last 3. And they did go down, and that was an OTL today, to Nashville 6-5. They play close ones. Of course, 2 wins against Detroit, 3-2, 3-2. Close loss against Columbus, 3-2. Close win against Columbus, 4-3, and then beating Chicago right after we beat Chicago. Chicago starting out 0-4, 5-4 and 5-2. So the big question mark for the Panthers are, what kind of effort are they going to get in goal? I think Bobrovsky's been splitting with Chris Redger, young goalie. They split, and he's been better. He's been under a 2 goals against average, 937 save percentage for Dredger. Might be the way they roll. Of course, Dallas still recovering a little bit from COVID, hitting the 8-game mark. Bolts, I think, travel to Dallas in the next week or 2. Let's see if I can snipe some tickets. I think one game's on a Saturday. Try to get out there. Nashville kind of struggling, getting off the blocks. We talked a little bit about Columbus. Hopefully that trade now with Patrick Laine, who I believe scored today. First game, he's in the lineup and gets a goal. And then, as expected, Blackhawks, Red Wings in the caboose of the Central, as we thought they would. But is Florida going to be that surprise playoff team? Dallas still playing good hockey, still trying to find their ground post-COVID. So we'll see what happens, and we'll update that next week on the podcast, see how we are in the Central. Talked about depth, Lines, and Johnson. So that takes us to our Golden Wagon winner. We got to play the clip, right? Play the victory music for Andrei Vasilevsky.
Yes!
He's our Golden Wagon winner for this last week. course, when you have stats like this, really hard to give the Golden Wagon to anyone else. 1.74 goals against average in the last 4. And a save percentage of .935 over the last 4 games. So Andrei Vasilevsky, the big cat, he is the Thunderdome Puckcast Golden Wagon winner of the week, or of the series, or of the 2 series, I guess. We're doing it this time. So he joins the club of winners. Right now, Stamkos, Hedman, and the big cat all tied with 1 on the Golden Wagon leaderboard. All right. Let's close it off today with a little bit of non-Lightning news. I promise I will feature a little bit more of that as we move forward with the podcast in this strange 2021 season. And we usually cover some of the other news as we look at the divisions other than the Central. And we wanted to start out with what's becoming a crazy fun division. Oh, Canada, the Scotiabank North Division has been absolutely bonkers. And with the exception of Ottawa, Calgary really not playing well. Really, really slow start. You still have to include them in still being in competition for that, at least a playoff spot. But man, it's really becoming a 2-pony race here. Even though Winnipeg is 2 points out, really the Leafs and the surprising Canadians. Maybe not so surprising. They made some noise at the end of the year of the playoffs. Carey Price is playing like Carey Price. And heck, even when Carey Price takes the night off, it's Jake Allen in net. So, the drop off isn't too steep from Carey Price. If you're hoping to get a break playing the backup goalie for the Canadians. Really, though, the big story has been Edmonton. My God, if they could just get some goaltending. Can Edmonton get some goaltending? Edmonton, man, probably could have 2 or 3 more wins on the season. Get to the leaders, because few reviewers of our show, of course, last year we'd been talking McDavid and Draisaitl all year. And that's exactly what we're seeing again, though. Surprisingly, Tyler Toffoli, former Vancouver product, heading over to Montreal on a pretty cheap value contract, leading the league right now with 9 goals. Trying to pull up the leaders for 2021. Toffoli, though Brock Besser, not bad. Vancouver 8 goals. But really, again, the story, it's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, 8 and 7 goals respectively. I mean, that's just insane. Assists, 1 and 2, of course. McDavid, Draisaitl, Quinn Hughes having a slow start, but pretty good season so far. 13 assists. One day he was going to be a pretty solid defenseman. Then again, points, 1 and 2. McDavid, Draisaitl. Patrice Bergeron sneaking up there. Look at that. Sneaky Patrice always finds a way to get into the top 5 in points. And even Brad Marchand's getting into the game. But 24 and 22 points for McDavid, Draisaitl, respectively. Far and away, almost like a 10-point lead in the points race for McDavid so far. They could just get some goaltending. You could be looking at a definition of a wagon here. I'm trying to see what their goaltending stats look like, because Mikko Koskinen, that combined they're under 90% save percentage with a goals against average of 3.5. No kidding that they have to score that many goals just to be 500 right now. But man, if the Oilers once again not addressing goaltending, riding with Koskinen, hopefully it just doesn't waste another season. I mean, I think that's the big concern. If you have to talk disappointments, it's got to be Vancouver, especially after that run in the playoffs. Despite it being the bubble playoffs, future looked young, promising, and then the offseason happened. You lose Jacob Markstrom. You lose Foley. Lose a couple others that couldn't necessarily afford. You had Braden Holtby, who's kind of a ghost of his past self. And then now you're kind of in trouble. I mean, again, you're still in it. And if Edmonton still has goaltending problems all the way down, they don't address that, you're still going to be neck and neck there. I don't know if Calgary recovers. And for God's sake, we know that Ottawa, despite getting a big W today, or yesterday, I think, going to be out of it. So it's really Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Vancouver. Who's going to be the odd team out? Who knows? Got to pick. Right now, it's probably going to be Vancouver, because Edmonton has too much firepower. But again, if you don't have the defense and the goaltending, it's just not going to matter anyway. Checking out Toronto, of course. We always love checking in on our Atlantic Division rivals. Austin Matthews, of course, always having an excellent year. I think he's in the top 5 in league goals. Mitch Marner having a good year, 14 points. Tavares at 10, and Matthews at 10. So kind of like the Lightning, right? Because when you look at the leaderboard, you don't see any Lightning guys ranked in the top 20. There's just so many mouths to feed, right? Everyone's got to score. Everyone's so good. So it's like those points get spread out. It's not like your number one line scoring all the points. I mean, Lightning have legitimate point scorers from line 1 down to line 3, especially this year. Line 4 not scoring as many points or assists or goals for that matter. So not to worry if you don't see the Lightning or your favorite Toronto Maple Leafs players in the leading the scoring race. Again, kind of a similar situation to the Lightning. Lots of mouths to feed on Toronto. They're going to get theirs. It's going to be okay. Matthews looking strong. I've liked what I've seen from the few Toronto highlights I've seen. And again, Montreal, Tyler Toffoli, very surprising. I think that's going to do it for this episode of Thunderdome Puckcast, episode 28. Hope you enjoyed our talk tonight. Of course, we hope to get back at our regular schedule post the Super Bowl. And then, of course, we'll be dropping our regular, finally, once again, no more vacations for a little bit. We'll be dropping our usual series previews, series recaps, and other content on our Facebook page and our YouTube page as well. You can find us at the Sports Moose or the Sports Moose Show. That should get you some results as well. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Go Bucks and go Bolts as we get into the big stretch coming up in February for the Lightning season. Take care.